Hi there, and welcome to a value-packed episode of Ignition. I know what you're thinking. This car, the Mercedes-Benz S65 AMG Coupe, looks like $1 million. Thing is, it only costs $250,000. Well, if I'm being honest, I will admit that it costs $252,675. But what's a decent bottle of wine amongst friends? Obviously, from a looks to price ratio, this thing is as good as it gets. But the question becomes, does it drive as good as it looks? There's exactly one way to find out. Normally at this point in the video, we get into the cars and start driving and talking, but it strikes me that this car is so stunning, so exquisite looking, that I really need to stand here and talk about the design, and specifically the designer, Gordon Wagner. Gordon is the head of Mercedes-Benz design, and here's how important he is. You all remember the SL, the folding hardtop convertible? It's ugly, very ugly, and I happened to be in the room when they pulled the sheet off it for the first time in North America, and the silence wasn't just deafening, it was terrifying. Now, since that time, Gordon has kind of righted the ship. You've had the S-Class and the C-Class, and they're pretty good. But then you have the S-Class Coupe, and I think it's just a fabulous design. There's really not a bad angle on it. Now, you can nitpick little things, like I'm going to do this. For $5,300, they'll give you the carbon fiber package, which you get carbon fiber mirrors and carbon fiber side sill and a diffuser and some kind of splittery thing. And it's a 5,000-pound coupe. You don't need carbon fiber or anything. But it looks okay, and really it's just nitpicking. Normally, I'm not a fan of matte chrome or whatever these wheels are made out of, but when you take them as a whole, especially with the emerald green paint and the $9,000 carbon ceramic brake rotors with the orange calipers, it looks really good. And you get up front, you've got these like crystal LED daytime running lights and that grille with the blingy bright work, and just taken as a whole, I think this car is stupendous looking. And now I'm sitting inside of the S65 AMG Coupe, and I gotta tell you, it's even prettier in here than it is on the outside. I'm gonna say something, and it's a big statement, but here it is. This is the best car interior you can buy. Maybe the Pagani Huayra is a little bit better. Maybe not. What they did was they actually put a different dash in the coupe than they did in the sedan, which is not cheap, but it's also smart. It kind of differentiates the cars. I mean, look at this leather, look at the stitching, look at the metalwork, and look at, actually, most of all, the woodwork with these comet tails. It's a subtle touch, but it harkens back to pre-war deco cars. I'm thinking specifically of the 1937 Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantique Coupe, which has bright work that looks like a comet's tail, just like this. And it's just a wonderful kind of homage to this past era, you know, of Berlinettas and things like that. Just the seats, I mean, look at these seats. They're absolutely gorgeous, and they're like the Bentley Continental. They kind of waterfall down, so that means when you're eating French fries, they're not going to get caught up here. I should also mention, first of all, this is pronounced Designo, but there's this little crystal that is on top of the cup holder cover here. My colleague, my friend, Scott Evans, thinks this is by far the worst part of the car. And after looking at it for a while and thinking about what he said, I've come to the conclusion that he's nuts. It's just a nice little crystal. This interior is an incredible place to be, especially from behind the wheel. So, this is the S65 because it has a 6-liter twin-turbo V12 that makes just dumb numbers. 621 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque. It's just so much. Now, you can, of course, get the S550, which has a twin-turbo 4.7-liter V8, or a S63, which has a 5.5-liter, also hand-built, AMG twin-turbo V8, but why on earth would you when you could have an S65? Okay, money, fine, but really you want a V12. Why do you want a V12? Well, I could geek out and explain to you that, essentially it's two inline sixes sharing a common crank, and therefore your primary and secondary harmonics are canceled out and it's completely balanced, but I'm not going to. I'm going to revert to the inner 12-year-old in all of us and say that 12 is more than 8, therefore it's better. Anyways, my point is, even with all that power, it's not about going fast. Is this car quick? Oh, God, yes, absolutely. Check out the performance numbers. But it's not about that. See, like a Learjet, right? Private plane. It flies, 400, 450 miles an hour, but that's not what it's about. You would never know you're going that fast. It's about relaxation. And likewise, when you're in here in the S65 AMG Coupe, you're just kind of moving and it's just relaxing. Yes, you're going 100 miles an hour. It feels like you're going 40. And that's the point. I would argue that this car should be optional on health insurance plans. Instead of like a nice massage, drive this thing around. Totally will relax you. In fact, it's got massage. It actually has 6 different massagers. It's just got this luxury barge feeling, but not in a bad way like a 74 Lincoln. It still feels modern and tight and powerful, and then when you do punch it, it's so much torque. It's just a kick in the back of the head. It's not loud, it's not eruptive, it's not disruptive. It just kind of goes. I ran into a guy at a gas station this morning. He had a CL600, which, is the kind of the predecessor to this car. And he was saying, what he loves about it is it's so quick that you just pass people. It's never an issue. You just pass them. End of story. And it's even more true in the 65. Now, you might have noticed we're here on Mulholland Drive, a pretty curvy road. And how's this thing handled? Well, very good for a 5,000-pound two-door. Sports car? No, it's a big luxury coupe. But it's pretty good. In fact, right now I'm in this mode called curve control. Here's how that works. We have stereo cameras, and what they do is when you're in curve control, they look at the lines in the road ahead, and they kind of figure out how the turn's going to be. And as you're going through it, they adjust the suspension to kind of tip the car more. Now, the idea being, if I'm going to the right, actually I'm going to the left right now, but I'm about to go to the right. The idea being, if I'm going to the right, instead of getting pushed against the door, which you still get a little bit, it tries to angle the car this way so that my butt is pushed against the seat. It's subtle, it's not super dramatic, but you do feel it, and what it really does is it just smooths everything out. Again, relaxation, not out-and-out sport. And again, remember, this engine, or at least a version of this engine's called the M275. There's a version of it with smaller turbos and some other stuff called the M158. Well, that's the engine in the Pagani Huayra. So this engine is very sporty, even if the car isn't. So, before there was the S-Class Coupe, there was the Mercedes-Benz CL. And that was, for all intents and purposes, a two-door S-Class. So why would they drop it? Well, I never got a clear answer from Mercedes, but as far as I can tell, when they launched the new S-Class, the W222, they made a big deal about how it's the best car in the world. So, are you going to have a more expensive version of the same car, because remember, you remove doors and you add price, that has a different name? No, you also want to keep that in the S-Class family, and so that's what they did. Seals are interesting. I mean, it's basically a starter car for the guy that's eventually going to one day buy a Bentley Continental or a Rolls-Royce Wraith. However, I think Mercedes has upped the ante so much, I think, that, boy, would you buy a Wraith over this? Would you buy a Bentley Continental over the S65 AMG Coupe? And the answer is, I'm not sure. Really not. I'd love to get this together with those cars and perform a proper head-to-head, but I am saying that you can mention them in the same breath, and that, in and of itself, is quite an accomplishment. Now, I've seen this thing in action. I know exactly how safe this car is. Mercedes, by the way, is claiming it's one of, if not the safest cars in the world. But I know you might have some doubt. So, we've devised a little test to show you just how safe it is. I'd like to mention that my initial plan was to use one of our expendable video producers, Corey, but for some reason they wouldn't let me.
I'm just going to run out of frame.
Okay, we have front camera, so you can run now.
All right, so what we're doing is we're running a $250,000 Mercedes into a blow-up doll to demonstrate how this thing has automatic braking. It can use the stereo cameras to see pedestrians. And here we go. Totally works. Unbelievable. Look at that. Totally works. Problem is, as the blow-up doll deflates, it tries to run it over, but it totally worked. So, back to the initial question. Is the S65 AMG Coupe as good to drive as it is to look at? I'm going to keep this very quick and say, oh yes, absolutely. In fact, it's more than that. This is one of those cars where it's more than the sum of everything. And let's think about the everything. You've got the exterior looks. You've got this fabulous interior. You've got the way it drives. You've got all the technology. You've got that tug from that creamy smooth twin turbo V12. $252,675 is a lot of money. And again, I'm very lucky I get to drive a lot of cars that cost that much. Is this one of the more desirable vehicles in that price range? Absolutely. Yes, it is. That torque, come on.
The one-handed.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. Well, that's how you drive this car, right? I mean, you know, it's like a Rolls Royce. You know, you're supposed to keep your hands at 8 and 4 instead of 9 and 3.
Oh, really?
Well, it's like back in the day, that's how you had to drive because you had to brace yourself against the door and like this. So the proper way to drive this car is like this. Auto braking, blah, blah, blah. Wanted to kill a cameraman. Wouldn't let me. So instead, we're plunging a $250,000 Mercedes at an inflatable blow-up doll and hoping the auto brake feature works, which it totally won't because it's windy. Oh, it worked! It worked! Wow, it worked! Whoa. Then I tried to run him over.